This is the 2 p.m. May 6th update on flooding operations and conditions here in New Brunswick. I'm joined today by Mr. Ahmed Dasuki from the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, as well as Marie-André Bolduc from MB Power. Absent from this briefing, Mr. Mike Carr from St. John EMO is on the line. Absent today is Jasmine Boisvert from Hydrology, literally because he was incapable of getting here due to a traffic issue on the bridge. So I'll start with a couple of statements in French. Excuse me. Comme on le prévoyait, le niveau d'eau a atteint des niveaux historiques dans les régions du sud du fleuve Saint-Jean. Les résidents des régions à risque doivent évacuer maintenant. Il est important de communiquer avec la Croix-Rouge canadienne et nous continuons d'évaluer les besoins avec nos partenaires fédéraux. Now, as you can all now appreciate, water has been steadily rising for more than a week and have reached historic highs in the southern region of the province. These are surpassing levels that were experienced in 1973. With rain in the forecast, residents living in the St. John system should continue to exercise extreme caution and remain alert to these rising water levels, in particular from Fredericton South. The greatest concern at this time is in the south. However, NBEMO continues to monitor water levels in communities in the northern half of the province. The Madawaska River water level is increasing not dramatically, but to some extent, due to an increase of water outflow from the Témiscouata Dam in Quebec, and as well, of course, from the existing high water levels in the St. John system. And this increase may, and I emphasize may, affect residents in the local service district of Saint-Jacques along Westfield Road. While this flooding occurs each year, NBEMO, of course, will be closely monitoring it and being prepared to respond to any local requirements. Now, about the overall situation, as you have been told repeatedly, government continues to consult in an ongoing way with municipal and federal officials. These include the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the Coast Guard, Department of Fisheries and Oceans, Armed Forces, on any relief needs or anticipated ones. We have asked and received support from the Coast Guard specifically, Department of Fisheries and Oceans, and Transport Canada to provide assistance where it's most needed, and they've brought some great capabilities to us in the form of boats, command and control personnel, overflights by Transport Canada to do aerial surveillance, and provide us with some great imagery for planning purposes. The situation is being and continues to be closely monitored, and the armed forces continue, as do the other federal departments, to be in constant consultation and conversation with us. Now, that being said, water levels continue to rise steadily in the southern area of the province. Residents in these regions experiencing or who are prone to flooding, we are telling them to consider evacuating. And when they make that decision, we want them to register with the Red Cross, make arrangements as necessary, but certainly to register in any case so that we'll have awareness of where they are, where they've come from, and certainly be able to follow up and plan accordingly for assisting them as necessary. To date, 412 households and 975 people have registered with the Red Cross. Now, the Canadian Red Cross is represented here in the room by Mr. Ansel Langell, if you have any specific questions for him. But you also should be informed that the Canadian Red Cross has launched an appeal for donations to support those affected by this flood. If you require more details, I would commend Mr. Langell to you. Anyone interested in donating, I will give you the phone number. It's 1-800-418-1111. 1-800-418-1111, or visit the website of the Canadian Red Cross. Now, you're going to hear lots about roads, and you'll get an update in more detail than I'll provide. But as you can well appreciate, floodwater is impacting roads in a lot of locations. And you will have heard that floodwaters are affecting the community of Chipman. And you'll hear the word isolation in regard to the community of Chipman. I just want to be perfectly clear that while the access and egress from that community is a problem right now, we have in place systems and abilities to ensure emergency response into that community, and a rather innovative use of some local rail line to enable resupply as necessary of any commodities that they require. Our colleague from DTI will provide an update shortly in more detail about road impacts and implications. So we're working very closely with the community of Chipman, as we are with all communities, and ensuring they can continue to ensure services in their area. Now, there could be more, and may very well be more road closures, as I described, water is continuing to rise. So the same advice that we've been dispensing for over a week is still very relevant. Drivers to be cautious, respect road closures, and we have incidents of frustrated drivers not doing that still. But we want to ensure that people understand the implications of what they're doing. And of course, avoid driving on roads that are covered with water, because that's a risky business and you don't know what's under your wheels. It also pushes water onto people's properties, and that may not be intuitive to the driver on his way by, but if you create a wave that goes onto someone's property, that just adds more water potentially into their basements or around their homes. And we don't want any unnecessary impacts, so we want people to be mindful of that. And of course, we don't want people sightseeing or attempting to get into flood zone areas to get that favorite photograph. There's contaminated water out there. Lots of sewage systems that have been compromised by flooding, and when they're overwhelmed, the sewage has no place to go but in the water courses or to back up into houses. The flood water can be heavily contaminated with sewage as a result. And people need to be mindful of the health risks, the risks of infections that come with that, as well as the risk of sickness. And I mentioned gastrointestinal illness that's often associated with contaminated water. A lot of information is available on this, and people just need to pay attention, stay informed, and if they have a question, there is lots of websites where they can get this information, government websites that'll give them authoritative information, what they need to know and what they need to do. Sandbags. They're available at locations in virtually every community that has asked for them, or that are located in such a way that it is useful to access them for local residents. There's an updated list of locations available. There is no shortage of sandbags. There are virtually hundreds of thousands of sandbags that have been positioned in caches all over the impacted areas. And of course, these arrangements are being made by municipalities as well as by the province and private businesses. Corporations like JDI, Cook Aquaculture, have provided over 175,000 of these sandbags. And that doesn't include a whole number of other private and corporate donations made by people or purchased by communities. The current operations being conducted are as have been described over the last couple of days. Where necessary, people are being rescued or evacuated because they've requested it. In other instances, security patrolling is being conducted to ensure that areas that have been evacuated are being kept an eye on so that they can certainly not be taken advantage of. There is activity with in excess of 30 boats throughout our areas, and these literally stretch everywhere in the river systems from Fredericton all the way to St. John. And at this point in time, from talking to subordinate elements that are out there coordinating, there is an adequate supply of boats available and being used to very good effect. Now, I'll shift my comments a little bit to allude to some of the things Mr. Boisvert from hydrology would have passed on. As you may have found a little bit of relief yesterday and last evening, there wasn't a significant amount of precipitation that occurred. And Environment and Climate Change Canada is suggesting that this evening in the overnight hours, there is potential for some rainfall, somewhere up to potentially 20 millimeters in the extreme south extremities of the province. So obviously we'll be keeping an eye on that and adjusting the way we do things accordingly. But essentially, precipitation like that just perpetuates the fact that the river system is full, and it's just going to have to be endured as the water flows through. Now, you would have noticed here locally in the Fredericton area, we keep using the word up and down, or describing it as really more or less stable. Minor fluctuations up and down are characteristic right now of around here, and we can anticipate that for another couple of days. I want to remind everybody, however, that getting below some magic number like 8 meters in Fredericton isn't going to be a dramatic improvement. Flood stage is 6.5 in Fredericton, so there's going to have to be a long run out of water before we approach getting back to the opportunities to recover and clean up. So, again, talking about the southern reaches, we haven't gotten to the highest water yet. When we speak about Gemseg and further south in particular, it's a slow, progressive rise, and as a consequence, you get slow but persistent deterioration of circumstances, and hence the possibility of more road issues and people making the decision that now it's time to self-evacuate. Now, the forecasted levels are available and posted on Riverwatch. The 5-day levels are there. Again, to paraphrase what's been said by hydrology many times, these are subject to change. They depend on weather, and they are to be considered forecasts, informed, scientific-based forecasts, but still forecasts. 3 days is a long way off when you start looking at a 5-day forecast. And a lot can change, and that has to be borne in mind. So we would tell people to continue to monitor the Riverwatch site for the latest information. A new forecast is posted there every day at 1 p.m. And without further ado, now I'll hand off to DTI, Mr. Ahmed Dasuki, to speak to DTI issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Thank you all. Water remains high on the Trans-Canada Highway between exits 330 and 339. Through traffic continues to be detoured at exit 306 eastbound and exit 423 westbound. The detour will remain in place until further notice. Route 10, west of the bridge in Chipman, remains closed due to water over the road. A resource road, Bronson Settlement Road, is available for emergency vehicles and larger vehicles, such as a half-ton truck. Smaller vehicles, such as a passenger car, are not recommended on this road. It should be noted that this is not a designated highway. To maintain the condition of the road for those who need to use it, we ask people to stay off of it unless they need to get in or out of the community. The more traffic on the road, the worse its condition will become. Please, if you don't need to be on the Bronson Settlement Road, stay off of it. This goes for all of our detours and non-designated roads. We need to maintain the condition of these roads for emergency use. There is also a Cien shuttle service in place, which is being used between scheduled Cien rail runs. It is dedicated to emergencies, EMO personnel, and DTI essential services. Last night, DTI closed the Kennebecasis River Bridge in Hampton due to high water. Detours are in place. please respect the barricades. At last count, there were 137 assets affected by this flooding event, including more than 100 fully or partially closed roads. That number is fluctuating constantly, so MB511.ca remains your best source of information on road or lane closures. We know that many people have property that they can't get to because of road closures, and we recognize how stressful that must be. We continue to ask residents to please respect the barricades and stay off we continue to ask residents to please respect the barricades and stay off of flooded roads for your safety and the safety of the first responders who may have to rescue you. If there is a barricade up, it's because the road is not safe. We continue to make every attempt to communicate road closures and detours to the public, and we appreciate the media's help in doing so. I urge the people to check mb511.ca for the latest up-to-date information on road closures. Drive with caution in the areas where water is over the road. Watch out for wildlife, and please do not stop in traffic to take photographs. We thank the public for their continued patience and cooperation as we respond to this unprecedented flooding. Thank you.
Thank you, Ahmed. I didn't notice that Mr. Boisvert came in the room from hydrology, but he assures me that I covered most of the things he would have been presenting anyway. So I'll pass on to Marie-Andrée Bolduc maintenant.
Merci. Good afternoon. We continue to have NV Power crews in the field with folks from technical inspection services, from public safety, to conduct any emergency disconnects if water levels are deemed to be an electrical safety hazard. We currently have 797 customers affected by the flood. If residents do evacuate their homes, simply switching off their breaker panel is not sufficient. It is still being powered, so we ask them to please contact us for an emergency disconnect at 1-800-663-6272. On the outages related to the windstorm that we had yesterday, we experienced some heavy winds, strong winds yesterday throughout the province. We had widespread outages in many areas. These outages were not related to the flood. They were caused mainly by trees making contact with our infrastructure and may have caused downed power lines as well. We have no major infrastructure damage at this time. We are also doing some air patrolling on our transmission lines just in a matter of due diligence. We currently have 47 NB Power crews across the province working on both the flood and on the restoration efforts. We've asked for mutual assistance from partners, and we currently have 29 crews working solely on the restoration efforts throughout the province. They are from various areas like St. John Energy, Edmundston Energy, Nova Scotia, as well as other companies from New Brunswick. We've made a lot of progress in terms of restoration in the last 24 hours, and we are populating our times of restoration on our website. We remind customers to be safe, remain at a very safe distance of any power lines that you could see downed or impacted by trees throughout the province, and those customers dealing with flooding, obviously if your water and electricity do not mix, so if you see an electrical hazard, please be safe. We understand that neither of these situations are really easy for our customers, and we thank them for their patience. En français, on a des équipes d'énergie NB qui continuent d'être sur le terrain avec les services d'inspection technique de la sécurité publique pour faire des débranchements d'urgence si les situations sont jugées dangereuses. On a environ 797 clients touchés par les inondations actuellement dans la province. On demande aux gens s'ils évacuent leur maison de nous appeler pour faire un débranchement d'urgence. Simplement, éteindre le disjoncteur n'est pas suffisant. Alors, on demande aux clients de nous appeler au 1-800-663-6272. Par rapport aux pannes qui sont reliées par les vents forts, on a eu des pannes, un grand nombre de pannes un peu partout à travers la province hier, causées par les vents. Les arbres ont fait contact avec nos infrastructures. On a environ 47 équipes d'énergie NB qui travaillent dans la province sur les inondations et sur le rétablissement des pannes. On a demandé de l'aide de nos partenaires. On a 29 équipes du groupe d'assistance mutuelle qui viennent des régions de la Nouvelle-Écosse, St. John Energy, Energy Edmundston et autres compagnies du Nouveau-Brunswick. Alors, on continue de mettre nos temps de rétablissement à jour sur notre site Web. Et puis, on demande à nos clients de rester en sécurité, de rester loin d'infrastructures qui pourraient être tombées par terre à cause des vents. Évidemment, d'être prudent dans les situations de panne. On apprécie que ce n'est pas une situation facile, mais on leur remercie de leur coopération et de leur patience. Merci.
Thank you, Marianda. We have Mike Kerr on the line from the city of St. John. Mike, can you hear us?
Yes, I can, Director.
Your comments, please.
All right. Thank you, Director. And St. John thanks you for your continued support, especially at the St. John EMO level. St. John EMO is warning that water levels here are continuing to rise and are expected to continue to do so throughout today. Riverwatch flood level projections show that the water is expected to crest on Wednesday and begin to recede on Thursday. Current level is 5.6, but we are still expecting it to rise to 5.8 in the coming days, and high tide is 5:30 today. We have not received any reports of loss of water or sewer services. St. John water crews are working around the clock to keep customers connected, and drinking water testing is ongoing, and reports at this time are good. Crews with St. John EMO and St. John Energy continue to make house visits in those in isolated areas and within the recommended evacuation areas. The St. John Police Force continue to patrol the areas and are stationed at some of the road closure barricades as some people continue to try to enter the isolation areas. Affected residents are being directed to contact Red Cross or go to the Carleton Community Center in St. John between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. for registration. Outside these hours, they can call the 1-800 Red Cross number. As of this morning, 106 households, 251 people in St. John have registered with the Canadian Red Cross. 41 people have been accommodated. And we have 14 roads that are being monitored, and many of them are closed at this time. Updates are provided on our mobile app and the city website. We have many organizations around the city who have generously offered support in a number of forms, whether it to be bag sand or require water evacuations. But we have seen a tremendous response from our community and to support one another. And we ask people to continue to do so what they can for their neighbors, friends, and family. We're keeping a record of offers that come in, and we'll reach out as needs are identified. At this time, we have a sufficient number of volunteers to meet our current needs. We're making note of all the offers, and we'll issue a call for volunteers as additional needs are identified, and anticipate this will be greater during the recovery period. For those looking for help, the Canadian Red Cross has provided a link on their website, as mentioned by the Director, which has also been shared by the city to receive financial donations for those impacted by or across New Brunswick by the flood. We are not set up in St. John at this time to accept any donations and divert them to the Canadian Red Cross. Boat deployments, Cook Aquaculture, members of St. John EMO, deployed 2 more boats today from 2 locations. To continue to assess the situation along the river and pre-plan for any required emergency responses. Today, the focus was to conduct well-being checks on isolated residents and those in hazard areas with severe flooding. The Canadian Coast Guard has maintained a presence on our waterways as well and are in place to respond to emergencies as the need arises. New to us, which was a large concern earlier in the week, was the Westfield Road. This road has been built up near the Mellinger Crescent intersection to allow continued access for residents and emergency traffic. Projected water levels earlier this week did not make this a viable option. Train evacuation, there is no train today. We were able to avoid shutting down the northern end of the Westfield Road, as mentioned, by building up the road yesterday. Quite an undertaking, as gravel was added on top of the existing asphalt to raise a 150-meter section of road by 3 feet, which has allowed residents to continue access to their homes. I want to thank MB Southern for their assistance over the past few days. With this access now in place, the daily train shuttle for evacuees has been discontinued for further notice. Any residents requiring emergency evacuation from the isolated areas or in around the South Bay should call 911. St. John Water, the clay berm around the Milledgeville wastewater treatment facility is holding back the water sufficiently. Every effort is being made by St. John water crews around the clock to ensure drinking water and sewer services are maintained to customers. We're maintaining our 3 sandbag locations. We do shut them down after 6 p.m. We have 2 west and 1 north. St. John Energy crews continue to be available to respond to requests for service shutoffs. They have reached out to all critical care and predicted flood zone area customers to ensure everyone is okay and understands when electricity must be cut off for safety to the customer, their neighbors, or crews working in the area. Those who require disconnect should contact St. John Energy directly. Currently, we have 39 St. John Energy customers that have been disconnected with no new requests today. And we have St. John EMO safety officers working with all flood response teams and making regular visits to the sandbag locations to ensure that volunteers remain safe in their efforts to help. Safety of our residents, members of St. John EMO, and all responding agencies is our #1 priority. We have a lot of resources strategically placed and are ready for deployments, including medical posts and off-road rescue stations. Please go to www.stjohn.ca for the most current information on the flooding in St. John. That's all there is to report at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, in terms of questions, if you have questions to any of us, of course, we're available. And also in the room, we have Brad Cameron from the city, and we have Ansel Langell from the Red Cross. Are there any questions?
I just had one, Director. We're just responding to some of comments on social media that on our site. With regards to life jackets in the St. John area, a lack of them. Is that anything you're aware of? People not being able to get life jackets because they're sold out or they're all being used?
I'm not aware of any such shortage, and in fact, at every coordination conference that I have, which happens twice daily with all the outstations, this has not come up as an issue. Now, life jackets specifically need to be part of the personal protective equipment that are in boats, and I have absolutely no reason to believe there's any validity to that statement. If people are getting in a boat, it's because they're getting in safe circumstances. Thank you.
There was a Tory MLA this morning tweeting that, it's been 3-4 days where the Army's been on standby. They haven't been called in. He was wondering why. I talked to the leader of the party, and he didn't agree with them. He's talked to and said it's not necessary. But maybe you could talk a bit about that. 'Cause there probably are a lot of people wondering why the Canadian Army isn't out there sandbagging and helping people.
I'm sure there are. The first thing I would say in response to that is that everyone's entitled to their opinion, and everyone's entitled at times to be incorrect. Important to note here, and I want to emphasize this, that this is an ongoing conversation and a continual, very, very careful assessment of needs. It's being done by hundreds of people and reported in a very orderly way. And I daily have been meeting with the very most senior levels of military in the Atlantic region, and we have talked about the potential or the possibility of military tasks. Now, lots of people, like I said, have opinions on this, and there's a lot of history around military assistance. People often want to speculate about what people could do or should have done. And again, that's their opinion, And there are as many positive opinions as there are negative ones. I am not in the business of being terribly concerned about opinions. I'm concerned with facts. I'm concerned with addressing the requirements, and I can assure the public that the requirements are being met. If those circumstances change, if there is an instance in any place in this province because of this incident or any other incident that would require additional assistance, whether it's military or some other federal department or other agency, then of course it will be requested.
Can we do you have a sense of when the Trans-Canada Highway will open and when the village of Chipman will have access to the outside world again, other than both?
I know, thank you. And I know we have a lot of closures. As I mentioned, we have 101 closures, whether full or partial, and I appreciate the patience that New Brunswickers are showing during these times. I also know it's not usual that we shut down roads for that long period of time, but the water is over the road. So for us at DTI, for us to open a road, it has to be safe for the public and for its use. So until the road is safe, it'll be closed. And I think that's sort of the short message. So it has to be safe for the use for the public and for the purpose it's built for. And we're monitoring it more than once a day, many times a day. All of those closures, we have about 4 or 5 calls a day that we review the road closures and the monitoring that we have. So we're keeping a close eye on all those roads that are closed, and whether it's Trans-Canada or any other highway, we'll open them up under safe for use for the public.
The stretch is too long, the Trans-Canada to build up like they did in St. John Westfield Road, right? They did a 150-meter stretch, they built it up 3 feet of gravel, you can't do that, right?
That'd be a question for our technical experts. My understanding, they did a review of what all the options are, and this is the option that the experts determined was required for that. Remember the heavy winds yesterday in Grand Lake with all the winds were slashing into the highway, and the lake would be slashing into the highway. So it's a very different situation in Grand Lake and City of St. John.
You mentioned the people who were affected, the number 797. What does that mean? You mean people who are disconnected?
Correct.
Disconnected?
Yep, that have been disconnected in the last few days, and that work is ongoing, and we expect that to keep going up. I don't know by how much, but obviously safety is the priority here for everyone involved, so
Okay.
that's the number as
and
of
that's
right now.
houses and businesses, right? Customers. So
Correct.
there's more people involved now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions? Or are there any questions that you might want to direct to Mr. Carr from St. John, who's on the phone still? Okay, we'll do this again tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Stay safe and travel safe.